This video is brought to you by the Sapphire Pulse range of RADEON GPUs. Hello everybody, before we get started, I want to quickly let you all know that we are going to be looking into the performance of this and many other games again soon. We are currently in the process of upgrading our recording setup and we are still waiting on a few bits and bats so we can get that capture card up and running again. So if you're looking forward to more performance videos, be sure to slap that subscribe button and to ding that bell so you get notified of all of our future uploads. With that said, let's get this video started. Today I want to take a look at the recently released Wolfenstein Youngblood and give all of you my impressions after around 9 or 10 hours of gameplay. If you are already thinking about picking up the game for yourself, I do recommend that you watch towards the end of the video as there are a fair number of changes to the formula when compared to previous Wolfenstein games that could very well influence your decision. The game starts off with an introduction to Jesse and Sophia, the twin daughters of the Nazi killing machine BJ Blazkowicz, who you will be playing throughout the 9 or 10 hour long campaign. The first couple of cutscenes are fairly serious in tone, showing the sisters honing their skills in preparation for a potential second Nazi invasion of America. These cutscenes are very reminiscent of some of the very best story sections that we got to see in the previous game, The New Colossus. However, unfortunately, that tone soon fades away and devolves into nothing really, it just devolves. Basically, BJ Blazkowicz goes missing and the two twin sisters with the help of their friend Abby get wind that he was last spotted headed towards France. So the trio end up hijacking an FBI helicopter and heading off towards Paris in the hopes of tracking him down. The first hour or so is used to set up the story, but once that's done the game opens up and the cutscenes pretty much vanish barring after a few key missions, and in their place you get quick conversations with NPCs in the game's hub world that is set in the catacombs under Paris, and the world building is mainly explained through collectibles that you find throughout the rest of the environments. Now, this all starts to make sense when you consider that Wolfenstein Youngblood is a co-op focused experience. The mission and the story structure is actually kind of reminiscent of what we see in a lot of looter shooter games such as The Division, Destiny and even Anthem, meaning that the vast majority of the missions that you get sent on don't actually require that you have progressed the story to a certain point, and as a result, said missions also don't progress the story either. This is most likely a side effect of designing the game around this kind of drop in and drop out co-op. Concessions need to be made since many players are potentially going to be playing at least some of the missions outside of the correct order. On the surface, there really is nothing wrong with handling a story like this, at least providing that the developers are able to find a decent balance between the story and the other core elements. Unfortunately, however, Wolfenstein Youngblood doesn't quite manage to get this balance right, mainly due to a lack of both moment-to-moment incentives as well as more long-term incentives as we see in games like The Division, Destiny and yes, even Anthem. I mean, the inclusion of cosmetics, microtransactions and daily and even weekly challenges all hint towards Bethesda and Machine Games having at least some desire to treat Wolfenstein Youngblood as a live service and have people playing the game consistently over a long period of time. The problem is, I just don't think that there's enough of a game here to have that happen. Sure, there will be some hardcore players that will spend hundreds if not thousands of hours grinding to complete each mission on the hardest difficulty, but these players are the exception and certainly not the rule. So you end up with a game that's got a story designed around long-term play, without actually providing any long-term incentives or activities, which is just a massive shame because I believe that most people honestly were just hoping for another Wolfenstein game with the ability to play with a friend. These changes to the story structure mean that if you're looking to just blitz through the campaign and ignore all the side missions, you're most likely going to be done after around 5 or 6 hours. I mean, credit where credit's due, the game is reasonably priced, coming in at just £25 here in the UK, or £35 for the deluxe edition, which also comes with a buddy pass. This buddy pass allows you to invite a friend that doesn't actually own the game to download it and play it with you for free. They don't get access to the achievements and they won't be able to play it on their own, but I still think that this is a neat feature that I really wish more co-op games would offer. Whilst there is obviously a fairly heavy focus on co-op, you are at least able to play the game offline, but you will be forced to play with an AI controlled companion which does have a few of its own issues that we will look into later in this video. The one small complaint that I do have about the Buddy Pass is that it's only available on the deluxe edition, meaning that players that have already bought the game have to pay more in order to have their friends play with them. Personally, I would have loved there to have only been a single version of the game available for like £30 that came with the Buddy Pass. I mean, it keeps things simple and it also keeps them fair. But anyway, before I go any further, I want to make it clear that on its own, totally separated from any of the previous Wolfenstein games, Youngblood is actually not all that bad. The problem is that it's almost impossible to make that separation mentally, especially if you are somebody that's already enjoyed any of the previous Wolfenstein games, and this is because outwardly, Youngblood presents almost identically to the new Colossus, so of course there are going to be some preconceptions and expectations placed upon it. Players that are on the hunt for some more Wolfenstein that they already know that they love are most likely going to be disappointed, whereas I think that players that are looking for a decent co-op experience could find quite a bit of enjoyment here. With all that said, let's have a look at how Youngblood deviates from the previous games in the series and where it is pretty much the same. First of all, the presentation is almost identical to Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, which is awesome because that game already looked incredible. It's both the lighting and the geometric density that are by far the most standout features. Every single object looks super detailed and anything with rounded edges appears silky smooth. The one aspect of the presentation that I do still find to be a little bit slacking, as it is in all the previous games in the series, is the lack of destruction, which leaves many of the environments feeling very static when compared to most modern shooters. Level design is one area where Youngblood has seen the most improvement over its predecessors. Arcane Studios, the developers of the Dishonored games, also worked on this project, and I think that it's safe to assume that they played at least some small part in these improvements. Not only is there an added layer of verticality to the many environments, but even on a micro level, there appears to be much more freedom in how you can traverse many of the game's combat arenas. Though it is worth pointing out that this extra freedom can sometimes cause a few issues with the enemy AI, as they will frequently refuse to enter certain buildings, or just stand there and look at you if you're looking at them from outside of a window, for instance. It's nothing too jarring, but in extreme cases I even had bosses just stand there and basically do nothing. So be careful, try not to cheese the enemies. While on the topic of level design, it's also worth noting that unlike the previous games in the series, Youngblood embraces a more free-flowing map and mission structure. While there are still certainly a bunch of missions that play out in a linear fashion, the majority of the missions now take place across a small number of district maps. Each district spans the area of what I would call a few city streets, and we're not talking about a huge area here, but at least what there is packed with a fair amount of verticality and quite a few enterable buildings dotted about. To be clear, these streets are under Nazi control. You will not be bumping into friendly NPCs or observing citizens going about their daily lives. They are packed with enemies, and those enemies will respawn if you leave the immediate area, which yes, can get frustrating. I just want you to understand exactly what I'm talking about here. The missions themselves are unfortunately rather lackluster, frequently just being a case of go get this, go kill that, or go there and press this button, and this includes many of the main story missions as well. None of this would really bother me if I was enjoying the combat even half as much as I had done in the past, but I'm not, and that brings me on to by far the biggest change, the introduction of light RPG elements in the form of leveling up, abilities, and enemy scaling. In Youngblood, you mainly gain XP from killing Nazis and completing objectives. Once you get enough XP, you will level up, receive an ability point, and get a 2% buff to your damage output. Ability points are spent on unlocking and upgraded, you guessed it, abilities. These range from your fairly standard health and armor buffs through to skills and abilities that change the way that you play, such as the ability to carry heavier weapons or being able to go invisible for a short period of time. Nothing too crazy really, and I'm sure that you get the idea what I'm talking about. The 2% damage buff is something that I'm not sure I fully understand for reasons I will go into very shortly. You see, the whole idea of a leveling up system is where I believe Youngblood really confuses and ultimately loses a lot of its potential player base. Not because a leveling up system on its own is a bad thing, because many great games have got these kind of systems. For instance, using a leveling / ability point system is a great way of gating off certain content and weapons till later on in the story, giving the player a constant feeling of progression, both in terms of power and competency. A good example of this would have been games like Far Cry prior to New Dawn, and the Tomb Raider reboots, and even the Mass Effect series. Many of the issues that people take with modern leveling systems don't actually revolve around leveling up your playable character. They're more focused on having the enemies also scale with that player's level, which is something that Youngblood is guilty of. In Youngblood, each enemy has a health bar floating above their heads. A solid red bar indicates the enemy's health, and to the right of that bar you will often have a secondary bar made up of either squares or white lines. This is the enemy's armor stack, and you need to wear that down before you can start chipping away at their health. The reason for the two armor styles being squares or white lines is because that different types of armor are weak to different types of ammo. Under your weapon's ammo count, you will see either a square or a line, meaning that you want to use heavy ammo versus heavy armor and light ammo versus light armor. I don't actually mind this system, as personally I find that it keeps me on my toes and constantly switching weapons. However, if you ever run out of a certain ammo type or you're in a bit of a panic and forget to switch weapons, this system can make enemies feel pretty much invincible at times. It's not uncommon to have to ventilate an enemy with 20 to 30 close range shotgun blasts before they will finally give up the ghost, which personally I find to be incredibly frustrating. The new armor system is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the bullet spongy enemies though. To the left of the health and armor bars, we have a small little box that contains either a number or a skull icon. This is the level of any given enemy, with a skull representing an enemy that is far beyond your own current level. An enemy that's at the same level as you can be put down in around the same amount of time as what you would have expected playing the previous Wolfenstein games, providing of course that you are using the right ammo against them. However, as soon as you fight enemies that are just a few levels higher than you, this is where most of the problems start to begin. Whilst I've not gone through and tested this properly, it feels as if enemies just a few levels higher than yourself can often take many times more punishment before going down. And since enemies scale with your own level, meaning that you're not going to be bumping into enemies that are much lower level than yourself, you never actually feel like you're getting any stronger. This is not an issue of difficulty, as you yourself are pretty much invincible most of the time due to the co-op nature of being able to help each other up, having extra lives, and the pep system that basically allows you to emote to each other to instantly gain health and armor. It's an issue of consistency and feel. Put simply, it's not uncommon to get into a fight with 3 enemies that all look identical barring that level number that's hovering above their heads. This means that while looking pretty much the same, they will each dish out different amounts of damage and take varying levels of punishment before dying. This really messes with the consistency of combat and makes it difficult to plan ahead during a fight. I often found myself having no idea how much punishment a certain enemy would take before engaging with it, which ultimately destroyed that awesome weapon feel that Wolfenstein is usually praised for. The weapons themselves feature a fairly decent customization system which allows you to choose between multiple weapon manufacturers when upgrading the individual parts for each weapon. While these do play around with the feel and have a big impact on how a weapon looks, unfortunately due to the leveling and the armor systems that we just mentioned, it's difficult to see what effect these customizations are actually having on the weapon's performance. This is not helped by the fact that the weapons are more inaccurate than what you would have likely expected, meaning that fighting at range really exacerbates this feeling of inconsistency that already plagues the combat. When the stars manage to align, combat can still feel amazing, it's just it doesn't manage to align nearly enough to save the combat from overall feeling like a massive step down from the previous games, and maybe even the worst that the series has seen in recent years. Beyond that, I also want to point out that stealth has taken a massive hit in Youngblood, mainly due to what we've just gone over, but also due to the simple inclusion of co-op. Previously, it was possible to clear most of the games primarily using stealth, but now that's not really possible. I mean, maybe it is if you've got a decent co-op partner and you're using voice comms, but generally, I found it to simply not be worth the effort. First of all, both you and your co-op partner need to be committed to a stealth run, something that is not going to happen if you're playing with random person online or using the AI controlled sister. And after that, you're going to want to make sure that you're not taking down enemies that are over leveled, as you can run into situations where you are physically unable to kill an enemy before they can raise the alarm. Thankfully, the melee weapons don't appear to be impacted by the leveling system and the new weapon balance, so you can at least take out most enemies fairly quickly and efficiently using them. But unfortunately, the enemies spawned in following an alarm are normally higher leveled enemies than what were already on the map, so it's very difficult to stabilise once chaos takes over. Also, due to the new leveling system, it's likely that aiming for a stealth run is going to leave you massively underleveled. I don't know, maybe I'm just really bad, but honestly, I would not even attempt a stealth run unless I had an equally committed friend to attempt it with. Once again, I want to make it really clear that you understand that I'm not saying that Wolfenstein Youngblood is a bad video game, just that it's not really a Wolfenstein game in terms of both game feel and structure. I honestly believe that people that are just looking for a decent co-op experience outside of the persistent online worlds of a looter shooter are going to be able to find a lot to enjoy here, and I think that the price point at launch is pretty much perfect for what you're getting, especially if you pick up the deluxe edition and make use of that buddy pass. No matter what side of the fence you find yourself on, there is no denying that a lot of what we've looked at today could mostly be considered to be subjective. Some people are going to love these changes and other people are going to hate them, and I hope that in some small way I've been able to cover them in a way that helps you come to your own conclusions. Unfortunately, however, there is still one fairly serious issue that I need to bring to your attention. Bugs. During my 10 or so hours of game time, I ran across a number of fairly substantial bugs that I feel I need to share with all of you. Please do bear in mind that not everybody is going to experience all of these or even any of these, but I did, and I don't think that it would be right for me to ignore them just because I expect them to be fixed somewhere down the road. And to be clear, I do expect that many of these will be fixed, so here they are. I had multiple instances where the audio would begin to stutter and cut out, requiring a restart in order to fix. I had entire missions where my AI-controlled twin sister would bug out and become unresponsive while teleporting around the map. I came across a few areas during missions where enemies would simply fail to spawn in, leaving vast areas of complete emptiness. And beyond that, there were even 2 instances where I fell through the map, requiring a restart once again. Oh, and I did have a single crash to desktop as well. I do want to point out that we never received a review copy of the game and that all these bugs happened on the fully released Steam version. Like I have mentioned a couple of times, I've actually only put in around 10 hours at this point, so it's safe to say that there was not even a single hour that I went by without me running into what I would consider to be a fairly serious or maybe even game-breaking issue. I don't know if I've just been super unlucky or if this is what a lot of people are facing at the moment. I just know that it needs to be fixed as soon as possible. Thankfully, Machine Games have got a decent track record when it comes to fixing their games in a timely manner, so fingers crossed, in a week or two I'll be able to jump back on with a friend and complete the game without running into any of the issues that I have already experienced. In conclusion, Wolfenstein Youngblood is pretty decent providing that you can go in there with an open mind. I would actually go as far to say that it's one of the better linear co-op games on the market and well worth a play if you've got somebody that you can play through the game with from start to finish. The game does, in my experience, have quite a few bugs at the moment, so I would certainly recommend that you wait and read up to see if these have been fixed, but overall I did not hate Youngblood. I just kind of wish that it was something that it's obviously not, but that doesn't make the game default bad. Oh yeah, and since I often get criticised for not talking about microtransactions, here we go. There are microtransactions in this game which are mainly just for cosmetics. Now, I'm not going to tread into this topic because I know that some people just hate them, other people don't care, and some people quite like them. I'm sure you already know where you stand on this issue, so nothing I could say is ever going to change your view. Just know that they are here and that they are mostly for cosmetics, and you can make up your own mind. But anyway, that is going to be me done for today. From myself and everyone here at the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel, thank you so much for watching. If you are new around here, please do consider slapping that subscribe button and ringing that bell so you get notified of our future uploads. And if you like the video, then please do like the video. If not, feel free to leave us a dislike. All we ask is that you please provide us with a bit of information to why you disliked it, so we can try and improve it going forward. If you've got any questions, feedback or suggestions, please do leave them in the comment section below this video and I will try to get back with you ASAP. Thank you once again, and until next time, we will catch you later. Bye-bye.